My task has been very significantly lightened by Ms. Radha Chavan, who made a very bold point, very persuasively though, namely that while really deploying CSEs, we need to keep in view the requirements specific to different setups. And in this case, I would like to take into account the university setup, because that's where I come from. But what interested me most was when she was making the point and I was clapping all alone, I looked around, found not a single person from the higher education sector here. Am I wrong? You from the higher education sector?
Private sector.
No, I'm saying higher education, professional higher education sector. No, I'm trying to make a big point, Chairman sir. The reason is, and also please take into account the type of complaints raised here against IGNO, that being the apex distance education body, which is only open to such type of treatments. For instance, if you want to have an online application done through a university setup, it has to be IGNO or one of its centers, or maybe NIOS. But NIOS now was not that much in picture when I used to. I belonged to the first generation of users of CSE for educational purposes. I went to a village, let me tell you very frankly. I was very senior officer, I was a vice chancellor in Uttar University, returned, and then I take it up. I went to a village, Panapur in Bihar. Is there anybody from Panapur in Bihar? BAD? No. The only way to reach the village is through boat. Now think of having served a premier university and also been a professor for, I don't know, so many years. When I see a high school person really giving some sort of education to all that is dark and characterized by scant availability from all angles, nothing can excite you more, nothing did. That's where a colleague of mine from Sahaj had taken me, and I was mightily impressed. That was my initial impetus to carry on the exploration. Very unfortunately though, after my retirement, things didn't move as they ought to have. I would like to share something also reflecting another interesting aspect. At Odisha, we were, me, UNICEF, and the Rural Development Ministry, we were engaged in a very interesting program called WATSUP, water-based sanitation. A typical situation in a village setup, you will find villagers defecating along the rims of the pond. And that gets mixed up with the water, and water gets unhealthy for consumption. And that is a source of disease. Can we promote rural health by taking this initiative? We did quite. It took six months for us to really persuade first batch of 12 villages. It is in 2003. For community action. And believe me, it only took 6 more months to get that spread like wildfire into 700 villages. UNDP later on takes it up. On one day suddenly, Ms. Nezma Heptullah lands on the site. She couldn't believe that a person, a vice chancellor, Tom was there, Tom is from UNICEF, and we were doing this exercise there. I was very much excited, rather quite exulted, and the second comment, for 2 reasons I was telling you. One is that I was very excited, the second one was, very interestingly, back to my office, my chancellor tells me, what has a tertiary officer got to do with primary sector problems? What has a tertiary sector officer got to do with primary sector problems? Of course, this is 2003, it may be very a decade old now. But this mindset, I must tell you, I must share with you with full conviction and responsibility, is present with most of us in one form or another. It gets only translated in different forms. But as long as this mindset is not put down, we may be shouting from housetops without results. This leads me straight to why the universities find it so, I would call it the university response is more confused than hostile. Universities don't have anything to attend to the requirements of CSC as such. In that case, they have to climb down, mark the words very responsibly used. They have to climb down and set up programs. I have listed out through my own experience only. The problems are as follows if you are going to really tie up with the higher education setup. The program offerings in such cases are going to be different. The publics they serve are different. The background and type of faculty who teach students should be different. Program assessments should be different. Governance, accreditation, and local management are different. Many of these people who take it, Mr. Chairman sir, they don't look at this difference at all. Anything that runs is the only reality that we recognize. As a unit, they are more dependent on interaction with the local communities. They can outreach to business and industry, for which the universities do not have the flexibility. Their philosophy of operation is different, and they interact with the local community more directly, not mediated by some other stakeholder. Such differences in terms of two organized formats are many, and one way so far found out is through the PPP model. Adoption of PPP model also doesn't take away the sting from these differences, as my own experience tells me. But till these complications are resolved one way or the other, universities should be made to realize this importance. I believe there are no efforts to make the universities realize this importance and put in place arterial roads for smooth functioning of the CSEs in the outreaches of the country. So how do we really lay out these arterial roads? Otherwise, there is no meeting point except in a very, what do you call, the official routine sense. Keeping the delivery specificities in view, they may be in all the areas listed above. But then the question would arise, if separate treatment is to be given to each aspect of the program administration, from admission to certification, from content creation to performance evaluation, why not have a separate body altogether? Yeah, that's a very valid question. Now this demands a good deal of out-of-box thinking, doing, planning, and policy formulating. Distance Education Council had recently constituted a committee to address these issues. There were two senior IAS officers, and I happened to be the chairperson of that committee. One feasible solution not amounting to a substantial departure, we suggested through that committee, is that it should creatively blend flexible patterns of ODL, open and distance learning, with the dominant features of VET, vocational education and training. Because what is happening is that the NKC has pointed out, National Knowledge Commission has pointed out, that the rigidities of the university structure, besides the mindset, the rigidities of the university structure are principally responsible for not giving space to this type of innovations, vocational education, and that will be the context in which actually CSEs can be usefully deployed. Now, once you are not to have those rigidities, we have a flexible system called ODL system. And in that flexible system, further flexibility can be incorporated. Then only possibility of what you call meaningfully addressing the problems Rather, a context can be created where CSEs can be meaningfully deployed. We may conclude with a sad note though. Again, I'm sorry, I'm turning out to be a big critic, but they are all facts. Teacher training in this country is abysmally low. And believe me, Mr. Chairman, in the vocational sector, teacher training is non-existent. So also is the case with regard to training as such. You know, according to the UNESCO definition of VET, the T factor is training. Now, without training, you cannot be giving vocational education. That is why CSEs often must be finding themselves circumscribed in offering of the courses, in delivering of the courses. But this training aspect we have not looked into, nobody has looked into as yet. At least this is true of the higher education sector. A sobering thought in this connection, however, is the proposed amendment in the draft on the Apprenticeship Training Act that is on the anvil, in which they have not only taken the technical and engineering and management graduates, they have also taken non-technical graduates for coverage. Now, if we do not tap these gaps, which are very structural gaps, now there is a big possibility that more confused reception to the CSEs will be available from the, at least, university sector. It should also come from the NIO sector, but I am speaking for the university sector. Thank you very much. Thank you.